are spread throughout the universe, which is caused by the total material energy. And I know that they are sometimes manifest and sometimes, but I have never experienced the supreme form I behold as I see you now. Now all kinds of methods of theorizing have come to an end. That's interesting. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that He has spread Himself throughout the universe. But although everything is resting upon Him, He is aloof. The same concept is expressed here by Dhruva Maharaja. He states that before seeing the transcendental form of the Lord, he had experienced only the varieties of material forms, which are counted at 8,400,000 species of aquatic birds, beasts, etc. The fact is that unless one engages in the devotional service of the Lord, it is impossible to understand the ultimate form of the Lord. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 18:55. Bhaktya mam abhijananti, factual understanding of the absolute truth, who is it is impossible to understand the ultimate form of the Lord. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 18:55. Bhaktya mam abhijananti, factual understanding of the absolute truth, who is the Supreme Person, cannot be obtained by any process other than devotional service. Dhruva Maharaj here compares his previous state of understanding with the perfection of understanding in the presence of the Supreme Lord. The position of a living entity is to render service. Unless he comes to the stage of the stage of appreciating the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he engages in the service of various forms of trees, reptiles, animals, men, demigods, etc. One can experience that one man engages in the service of a dog, another serves plants and creepers, another the demigods, and another humanity, or his boss in the office. But one who is engaged in the service of Krishna, aside from common men, even men who are elevated in terms of spiritual understanding, are at the utmost engaged in service of the Virat Rupa, or unable to understand the ultimate form of the Lord. They worship avoidism by meditation. Dhruva Maharaj, however, had been blessed by the Supreme Lord. When the Lord touched his conch shell to Dhruva's forehead, real knowledge was revealed from within, and Dhruva could understand the Lord's transcendental form. Dhruva Maharaj here admits that not only was he ignorant, but by years he was only a child. It would not have been possible for an ignorant child to appreciate the supreme form of the Lord had he not been blessed by the Lord, who had touched his conch shell to Dhruva's forehead. Wow, that's how powerful the conch shell is of the Lord. Simply by touching Dhruva's forehead, Dhruva became fully cognizant of the Supreme Lord. Text number 14. My dear Lord, at the end of each millennium, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, dissolves everything manifested within the universe into his belly. He lies down on the lap of Sheshanada. From his navel sprouts a golden lotus flower on a stem, and on that lotus, Lord Brahma is created. I can understand that you are the same supreme Godhead. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Dhruva Maharaj's understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is complete. In the Vedas, it is said, Kasmin Bhagavo Vigyate Sarvam Idam Vigyatam Vijnatam Bhavati. Knowledge received through the transcendental, causeless mercy of the Lord is so perfect that by that knowledge, the devotee becomes acquainted with all the different manifestations of the Lord. Lord Kshirodakshai Vishnu was present before Dhruva Maharaja, who could also understand the Lord's two other forms, namely Garbhodakshay Vishnu and Kshirodakshay Vishnu, or Mahavishnu. Regarding Mahavishnu, it is stated in the Brahma Samhita 5.48. Yasyaikinishusita kalamatabalam ya jivanti loma vilaja jagrandanata Vishnuvahansa yasya kala vishesho govindamarikusham tamaham bhajami. At the end of each and every millennium, when all the material worlds are dissolved, everything enters the body of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who is lying on the lap of Shesha's neck, another form of the Lord. Those who are not devotees cannot understand the different forms of Vishnu and their positions in regard to the creation. Sometimes the atheists argue, how can a flower stem sprout from the navel of Garbhodakshay Vishnu? They consider all the statements of the Shastras to be stories. As a result of their inexperience in the absolute truth and their reluctance to accept authority, they become more and more atheistic. They cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But a devotee like Dhruva Maharaj, by the grace of the Lord, knows all the manifestations of the Lord and their different positions. It is said that anyone who has even a little of the Lord's grace can understand his glories. Others may go on speculating on the absolute truth, but they will always be unable to understand the Lord. In other words, unless one comes to contact with a devotee, it is not possible to understand the transcendental form of, or the spiritual world and its transcendental activities. Haribol. Okay, so it's not just ABCD to understand the transcendental qualities of the Lord and the form of the Lord. It says here, it is not possible to understand the transcendental form or the spiritual world and its transcendental activities. Okay. Text 15. My Lord, by your unbroken transcendental plans, you are the supreme witness of all stages of intellectual activities. You are eternally liberated. Your existence is situated in pure goodness, and you are existent in the super soul without change. You are the original personality of Godhead, full with 6 opulences, and you are eternally the master of the 3 living entities. As Lord Vishnu, you maintain all the affairs of the entire universe, and yet you stand aloof and are the enjoyer of the realm of all results of all sacrifices. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. An atheistic argument against the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead states that if God, the Supreme Person, appears and disappears, and sleeps and awakens, then what is the difference between God and the living entity? Dhruva Maharaj is carefully distinguishing the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from that of the living entities. He points out the following differences. The Lord is eternally liberated whenever He appears, even within this material world. He is never entangled by the three modes of material nature. Okay, that's very good information. He points out the following differences. The Lord is eternally liberated whenever He appears, even within this material world. He is never entangled by the three modes of material nature. He is known, therefore, as Sri Adisha, the master of the three modes of material nature. In Bhagavad Gita 7.14, it is said, Daivihi esa gunamayi mamamaya dharakeya. The living entities are all entangled in the three modes of material nature. The external energy of the Lord is very strong, but the Lord, as the master of the three modes of material nature, is ever liberated from action and reaction of those modes. He therefore is uncontaminated, as stated in the Ishopanishad. The contamination of the material world does not affect the Supreme Godhead. Krishna therefore says in the Bhagavad Gita that those who are rascals and fools think of Him as an ordinary human being, not knowing His param bhavam. Param bhavam refers to His being always transcendentally situated. Material contamination cannot affect Him. Another difference between the Lord and the living entity is that a living entity is always in darkness, even though he may be situated in the mode of goodness. Interesting. There are still so many things which are unknown to him, but it is not the same for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knows past, present, and future, and everything that is happening in everyone's heart. Bhagavad Gita confirms this. Vedaham samititani. The Lord is not part of the soul. He is unchangeable, supreme soul, and the living entities are His parts and parcels. The living entity is forced to appear in this material world under the direction of Daivi Maya, but when the Lord appears, He comes by His own internal potency, Atma Maya. Besides that, a living entity is within the time of past, present, and future. His life has a beginning, a birth, and in the conditioned state, his life ends with death. But the Lord is Adi Purusha, the original person. In the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma offers his respect to the Adi Purusha, Govinda, the original person, who has no beginning, whereas the creation of this material world has a beginning. The Vedanta says, Janmadasya, everything is born from the Supreme, but the Supreme has no birth. He has all the six opulences in full and beyond comparison. He is the master of material nature. His intelligence is not broken under any circumstances, and he stands aloof, although he's the maintainer of the whole creation. As stated, as stated in the Vedas, Katha Upanishad 2.2.13, Nityo Nityanam Chitanas Chitananam. The Lord is the supreme maintainer. Living entities are meant to serve him by offering sacrifices, for he is the rightful enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices. Everyone, therefore, should engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord with his life, his riches, his intelligence, and his words. This is the original constitutional position of the living entities. One should never compare the sleeping of an ordinary living entity to the sleeping of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the causal ocean. There is no stage at which the living entity can compare to the Supreme Person. The Mayavadi philosophers, being unable to adjust to all this, come to the conclusion of impersonalism or voidism. Well, Krishna is always a transcendental person.
Mm-hmm.
he's never anything else or anything lesser than that. Therefore, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam, this word is the supreme maintainer. The living entities are meant to serve him by offering sacrifices, for he is the rightful enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices. Everyone, therefore, should engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord with his life, his riches, his intelligence, and his words. This is the original constitutional position of living entities. One should never compare the sleeping of an ordinary living entity to the sleeping of the Supreme Personality Godhead in the causal ocean. There is no stage at which the living entity can compare to the Supreme Person. The Mayavadi philosophers, being unable to adjust to all this, come to the conclusion of impersonalism or voidism. Well, Mayavadis are completely nonsense. They never really come to the correct understanding of Krishna. Text number 16. My dear Lord, in your impersonal manifestation of Brahman, there are always two opposing elements, knowledge and ignorance. Your multi-energies are continually manifest, but the impersonal Brahman, which is undivided, original, changeless, unlimited, and blissful, is the cause of the material manifestation. Because you are the same impersonal Brahman, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that the unlimited impersonal Brahman is the effulgence of the transcendental body of Govinda. In that unlimited effulgent aura of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are innumerable universes with innumerable planets of different categories. Although the Supreme Person is the original cause of all causes, his impersonal effulgence, known as Brahman, is the immediate cause of the material manifestation. Jiva Maharaj therefore offered his respectful obeisances unto the impersonal feature of the Lord. One who realizes this impersonal feature can enjoy the unchangeable Brahmananda described here as spiritual bliss. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that this impersonal feature or Brahman manifestation of the Supreme Lord is meant for persons who are essentially very advanced, but still not able to understand the personal features or variegatedness of the spiritual world. Such devotees are known as Jnana Mishra Bhaktas, or devotees whose devotional service is mixed with empiric knowledge. Because the impersonal Brahman realization is a partial understanding of the absolute truth, Dhruva Maharaj offers his respectful obeisances. It is said that this impersonal Brahman is the distinct realization of the absolute truth, although apparently Brahman seems to be devoid of energy. Factually, it has different energies working under the headings of knowledge and ignorance. On account of these different energies, there is continually a manifestation of vidya and avidya, meaning knowledge and ignorance. Vidya and avidya are very nicely described in Ishopanishad. It is said there that sometimes, due to avidya or a poor fund of knowledge, one accepts the absolute truth as ultimately impersonal. But in development of devotional,
But in fact, the impersonal and personal realizations develop in proportion to the development of devotional service. The more we develop our devotional service, the more closely we approach the absolute truth, which, in the beginning, when we realize the absolute truth from a distant place, is manifest as impersonal. People in general who are under the influence of avidya shakti or maya have neither knowledge nor devotion. But when a person who is a little advanced and is therefore called a jnani advances even more, he is in the category of a jnana mishra bhakta, or a devotee whose love is mixed with the category, whose love is mixed with empiric knowledge. When he is still further advanced, he can realize that the empiric knowledge, he can realize that the empiric knowledge, when he is still further advanced, he can realize that the absolute truth is a person with multi-energies. An advanced devotee can understand the Lord and his creative energy. As soon as one accepts the creative energy of the absolute truth, the six opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are also understood. Devotees who are still further advanced in full knowledge can understand the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Only on that platform can one fully enjoy transcendental bliss. An example is given in this connection by Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura of a person proceeding towards a destination. As he approaches, he sees the destination from a distant place, just as we see a city from a distance. At that time, he simply understands that the city is situated at a distance. When, however, he comes still nearer, he sees the domes and the flags. But as soon as he enters the city, he sees various paths, gardens, lakes, and marketplaces with shops and persons buying. He sees varieties of cinema houses, and he sees dancing and jubilation. When a person actually enters the city and personally sees the activities of the city, he becomes satisfied. All right, so there's a difference between seeing from a distance and seeing up close. So seeing from a distance is an impersonal understanding, and seeing up close is personal seeing. You see all the varieties of things when you're up close. but from a distance you only see partially. My Lord, O Supreme Lord, you are the supreme personified form of all benediction. Therefore, for one who abides in your devotional service with no other desire, worshiping your lotus feet is better than becoming king and lording it over a kingdom. That is the benediction of worshiping your lotus feet. To ignorant devotees like me, you are the causelessly merciful maintainer, just like a cow who takes care of the newly born calf by supplying milk and giving it protection from attack. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Dhruva Maharaj was cognizant of the defective nature of his own devotional service. Pure devotional service is without material form and is not covered by mental speculation or fruitive activities. Pure devotional service is therefore called ahaituki, unmotivated. Dhruva Maharaj knew that he had come to worship the Lord in devotional service with a motive to get the kingdom of his Father. Such an adulterated devotee can never see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He therefore felt very grateful for the causeless mercy of the Lord. The Lord is so merciful that not only does he fulfill the desires of a devotee who is driven by ignorance and desires for material benefit, but he also gives such a devotee all protection, just as a cow gives milk to a newly born calf. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord gives intelligence. Excuse me. The Lord gives in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord gives intelligence to the constantly engaged devotee, so that he may gradually approach the Lord without difficulty. A devotee must be very sincere in his devotional service. Then, although there may be many things wrong on the devotee's part, Krishna will guide him and gradually elevate him to the highest position of devotional service. Well, that's good news. The Lord is addressed herein by Dhruva Maharaj as Purushartha Murti, the ultimate goal of life. Generally, Purushartha is taken to mean execution of a type of religious principle or worship of God in order to get material benediction. Prayers for material benediction are intended for satisfying the senses. And when one is frustrated and cannot fully satisfy the senses in spite of all endeavor, he desires liberation or freedom from material existence. These activities are generally called purushartha, but actually the ultimate goal is to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called Panchama Purushartha, the ultimate goal of life. Lord Chaitanya therefore taught us not to ask from the Supreme Personality any benediction, such as material wealth, popularity, or a good wife. One should simply pray to the Lord to be constantly cognizant of his desire for material benefit. One should simply pray to the Lord to be constantly engaged in his transcendental loving service. Dhruva Maharaj, being cognizant of his desire for material benefit, wanted protection from the Lord so that he might not be misled or deviated from the path of devotional service by material desires. Well, that should be the prayer for all of us. So Dhruva Maharaj is giving an example of the right consciousness that a devotee should have even though he's still in the, let's say, misunderstanding of so many things. But he should be cognizant of his desire for material benefit. Being cognizant of his desire for material benefit, wanting protection from the Lord, so that he might not be misled or deviated from the path of devotional service by material desires. So material desires are actually misleading. Our only desire should be to serve Krishna with love and devotion, understanding that the Lord will satisfy all our needs and at the same time purify our misleading, our misunderstandings about the purpose of spiritual life. Okay, text 18. The great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, when Dhruva Maharaj, who had good intentions in his heart, finished his prayers, the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, who is very kind to his devotees and servants, congratulated him, speaking as follows. The personality of Godhead said, my dear Dhruva, son of the king, you have executed pious vows, and I also know the desire within your heart. Although your desire is very ambitious and very difficult to fulfill, I shall favor you with its fulfillment. All good fortune unto you. Well, Dhruva is approaching the Lord with material desires. But because he is approaching the Lord is going to be very merciful to him. So therefore, whether we have no material desires or whether we have all material desires, we should always worship the Lord and take full shelter of Krishna. So if we do that, then gradually our material desires will disappear and our material desire or our material understand and our spiritual understanding of Krishna will manifest. The Lord is so merciful to his devotee that he immediately said to Dhruva Maharaj, let there be all good fortune for you. Wow, you see how merciful Krishna is. Even though Dhruva is coming to the Lord with material desire, and the Lord is saying, let there be all good fortune for you. The fact is that Dhruva Maharaj was very much afraid in his mind, for he had aspired after material benefit in discharging his devotional service, and this was hampering him from reaching the stage of love of God. In the Bhagavad Gita 2:44, it is said, Bhagashvarya prasaktanam, those who are addicted to material pleasure cannot be attracted to devotional service. It was true that at heart, Dhruva Maharaj wanted a kingdom that would be far better than Brahmaloka. This was a natural desire for a Kshatriya. He was also only 5 years old, and in his childish way, he desired to have a kingdom far greater than his father's, grandfathers, or great-grandfathers. His father, Uttanapada, was the son of Manu, and Manu was the son of Lord Brahma. Dhruva wanted to excel all these great family members. The Lord knew Dhruva Maharaj's childish ambition. But how was it possible to offer Dhruva a position more exalted than Lord Brahma's? The Lord assured Dhruva Maharaj that Dhruva would not be bereft of the Lord's love. He encouraged Dhruva not to be worried with worried that he childishly had material desires and at the same time had the pure aspiration to be a great devotee. Generally, the Lord does not award a pure devotee with material opulence, even though he may desire it. But Dhruva Maharaj's case was different. The Lord knew that he was such a great devotee that in spite of having material opulence, he would never be deviated from love of God. This example illustrates that a highly qualified devotee can have the facility of material enjoyment and at the same time execute love of God. This, however, was a special case for Dhruva Maharaj. Well, this is a nice way of saying don't try and imitate what Dhruva Maharaj is doing. Rather, remain completely humble and surrendered to the Lord without asking for any material benefits. But the case of Dhruva is special. What's so special about it? He is in a very prominent family tradition, and as a qualified devotee, he has the facility of material enjoyment and at the same time executes love of God. This, however, was a special case. What is that?
Fruit salad.
Oh, fruits. Okay. Thank you very much. What kind of fruits?
All mixed mango, apple, orange.
Oh, they give that. Huh? No.
No, I hate.
Okay. Thank you very much. Text 20 and 21. The Supreme Personality of Godhead continues. My dear Dhruva, I shall award you the glowing planet known as the pole star, which will continue to exist even after the dissolution at the end of the millennium. No one has ever ruled this planet, which is surrounded by all the solar systems, planets, and stars. All the luminaries in the sky circumambulate this planet, just as bulls tread around a central pole for the purpose of crushing grains. Keeping the pole star to their right, all the stars inhabited by the great sages like Dharma, Agni, Kashyapa, and Sukra circumambulate this planet, which continues to exist even after the dissolution of all others. Okay, so Dhruva Maharaj is going to get something that is very rare, and hardly anyone has such a benediction. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, although the pole star existed before its occupation by Dhruva Maharaj, it had no predominating deity. Dhruva Loka, our pole star, is the center for all other stars and solar systems, for all of them circle around Dhruva Loka, just as a bull crushes grains by walking around and around a central pole. Dhruva wanted the best of all planets, and although it was a childish prayer, the Lord satisfied his demand. A small child may demand something from his father, which his father has never given to anyone else. Yet, out of affection, the father offers it to the child. Similarly, this unique planet, Dhruva Loka, was offered to Maharaj Dhruva. The specific significance of this planet is that until the entire universe is annihilated, this planet will remain. Even during the devastation
which takes place during the night of Lord Brahma. There are two kinds of dissolutions, one during the night of Lord Brahma and one at the end of Lord Brahma's life. At the end of Brahma's life, selected personalities go back home, back to God. Dhruva Maharaj is one of them. The Lord assured Dhruva that he would exist beyond the partial dissolution of this universe. Thus, at the end of the complete dissolution, Dhruva Maharaj would go directly to Vishnu,
Vaikunta.
to Vaikuntha Loka, to a spiritual planet in the spiritual sky. Shiva Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura comments in this connection that Dhruva Loka is one of the lokas like Svetadvipa, Mathura, and Dwarka. They are all eternal places in the kingdom of God, which is described in the Bhagavad Gita, Tad Dhamma Paramam, and in the Vedas, Om Tat Vishnu Paramam Padam Sadapasyanti Suraya. The Lord Parastat Kalpa Vasinam, transcendental to the planets inhabited after the dissolution, refer to the Vaikuntha planets. In other words, Dhruva Maharaj's promotion to the Vaikuntha lokas was guaranteed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Well, the Vaikuntha lokas are eternal, as opposed to the mundane planets and so forth. Text 22. After your father goes to the forest and awards you the rule of his kingdom, you will rule continually the entire world for 36,000 of years, and all your senses will continue to be as strong as they are now. You will never become old. That's a nice
Blessing.
benediction. In the Satya Yuga, people generally live for 100,000 years. Dhruva Maharaj's ruling the world for 36,000 years was quite possible in those days. Text 23. The Lord continued, sometimes in the future, your brother Uttama will go hunting in the forest, and while absorbed in hunting, he will be killed. Your stepmother Suruchi, being maddened upon the death of her son, will go to search him out in the forest, but she will be devoured by a forest fire. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Dhruva Maharaja came to the forest to search out the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a revenging spirit against his stepmother. His stepmother had insulted Dhruva, who was not an ordinary person, but a great Vaishnava. An offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava is the greatest offense in this world. Because of having insulted Dhruva Maharaj, Suruchi would become mad upon the death of her son and would enter a forest fire, and thus her life would be ended. This is specifically mentioned by the Lord to Dhruva because he was determined for revenge against her. From this, we should take the lesson that we should never try to insult a Vaishnava. Not only should we not insult a Vaishnava, but we should not insult anyone unnecessarily. When Suruchi insulted Dhruva Maharaj, he was just a child. She, of course, did not know that Dhruva was a great recognized Vaishnava, and so her offense was committed unknowingly. When one serves a Vaishnava unknowingly, one still gets the good result.
And if one unknowingly insults a Vaishnava, one suffers the bad
Result.
result. A Vaishnava is especially favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pleasing him or displeasing him directly affects the pleasure and displeasure of the Supreme Lord. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his 8 stanzas of prayer to the Supreme Master, has sung Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada. By pleasing the Supreme Master, who is a pure Vaishnava, one pleases the personality of God. But if one displeases the spiritual master, one does not know where he is going. Well, it's not going to a good place, that's for sure. And that means that he's in complete ignorance. Text 24. The Lord continues, I am the heart of all sacrifices. You will be able to perform many great sacrifices and also give great charities. In this way, you will be able to enjoy the blessings of material happiness in this life. And at the time of your death, you will be able to remember me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The most important factor in this verse is the Lord's instructions regarding how to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead at the end of life. Oh, well, that's the most important thing. The moment of death is the most important moment of living entity. The moment of death will determine what's going to happen to the devotee. If the devotee is cognizant of Krishna and his mind is focused on Krishna, at the moment of death, he goes back to God. If the devotee is not cognizant of Krishna, but thinking about mundane things at the moment of death, he remains in the material world. Therefore, it says here, the most important factor in this verse is the Lord's instructions regarding how to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead at the end of life. Ante Narayana Smriti, the result of whatever we do in executing spiritual activities, is successful if we can remember Narayana, the Supreme Personality of God. This program of constant remembrance can be disturbed by many things, but Dhruva Maharaj's life would be so pure, as assured by the Lord himself, that Dhruva would never forget him, meaning Narayana. Thus, at the time of his death, he would remember the Supreme Lord, and before his death, he would enjoy this material world, not by sense gratification, but by performing great sacrifices. As stated in the Vedas, when one performs great sacrifices, he must give charity not only to the Brahmanas, but also to the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. It is assured here that Dhruva Maharaj would be able to perform such activities. In this age of Kali, however, the great sacrifice is the performance of Sankirtana Yajna. Our Krishna consciousness movement is designed to teach Sankirtana Yajna. Our Krishna consciousness movement is designed to teach people and to learn ourselves the exact instruction of the personality of God. In this way, we shall continuously perform the Sankirtana Yajna and continuously chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Then, at the end of our lives, we shall certainly be able to remember Krishna, and our program of life will be successful. In this age, distribution of prasada has replaced distribution of money. That's a good note to know. No one has sufficient money to distribute. But if we distribute Krishna Prasada as far as possible, this is more valuable than the distribution of money.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Hare
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 Rama,
Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Putra ki jai.
But just imagine how valuable it is that if you distribute both prasadam and money, that's even greater.
A lot of people will come Maharaj if we distribute money.
Well, we can do that too. Okay, text 25. The personality Godhead continued, my dear Dhruva, after your material life in this body, you will go to my planet, which is always offered obeisances by the residents of all other planetary systems. It is situated above the planets of the 7 rishis, and having gone there, you will never have to come back again to this material world. Wow, that's a real benediction. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the word navartate is very significant. The Lord says, you will not come back to this material world, where you will reach Matstanam, my abode. Therefore, Jiva Loka, or the pole star, is the abode of Lord Vishnu, within the material world. Upon it, there is an ocean of milk, and within that ocean, there is an island known as Swetadvipa. It is clearly indicated that this planet is situated above the 7 planetary systems of the rishis, and because of this, and because this planet is Vishnuloka, it is worshipped by all other planetary systems. It may be questioned here, what will happen to the planet known as Dhruvaloka at the time of the dissolution of the universe? The answer is simple. Dhruvaloka remains like other Vaikuntha lokas beyond this universe. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has commented in this connection that the very word Navartate indicates that this planet is eternal. Very interesting. The pole star, therefore, is Dhruva's planet and it's eternal. The great sage Maitreya said, after being worshipped and honored by the boy, Dhruva Maharaja, and after offering him his abode, Lord Vishnu, on the back of Dhruva, returned to his abode as Dhruva Maharaja was born. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. For this verse, it appears that Lord Vishnu awarded Dhruva Maharaj the same abode in which he resides. His abode is described in the Bhagavad Gita 15.6. Yat yatva na nivartante tadama paramam mama. And it is a transcendental planets in the universe. Okay, text number 27. Despite having achieved the desired result of his determination by worshiping the lotus feet of the Lord, Dhruva Maharaj was not very pleased. Thus he returned to his home. Wow, that's very strange, isn't it? He gets what is the highest, seemingly the highest benediction possible, and he's still not satisfied. By worshiping the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service, as instructed by Narada Muni, Dhruva Maharaja achieved the desired result. His desire was to get a very exalted position, excelling that of his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. And although it was a somewhat childish determination, because Dhruva Maharaj was nothing but a small child, Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is so kind and merciful that he fulfilled Dhruva's desire. Dhruva Maharaj wanted a residence more exalted than ever occupied by anyone else in his family. Therefore, he was offered the planet in which the Lord Lord personally resides, and his determination was completely satisfied. Still, when Dhruva Maharaja returned home, he was not very much pleased. For although in pure devotional service there is no demand from the Lord, because of his childish nature, he had demanded something. Thus, although the Lord also fulfilled his desire, he was not very pleased. Rather, he was ashamed that he had demanded something from the Lord, for he should have not done this. Well, that's called consciousness. Now he's understanding that he made a mistake. Let's see what's going to happen. Vidura inquired, my dear Brahmana, the abode of the Lord is very difficult to attain. It can be attained only by pure devotional service, which alone pleases the most affectionate, merciful Lord. Dhruva Maharaja achieved this position even in one life, and he was very wise and conscientious. Why then was he not very pleased? Okay, that's a good question. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Saint Vidura's inquiry is very relevant. The word arthavit, which refers to one who knows how to discriminate between reality and unreality, is very significant in this connection. An arthavit is also called Paramahansa. A Paramahansa accepts only the active principle of everything, just as a swan accepts only the milk from a mixture of water and milk. A Paramahansa accepts only the Supreme Personality of Godhead as his life and soul, neglecting all external material things. Dhruva Maharaja was in this category, and due to his determination, he achieved the result he desired, but still, when he returned home, he was not very pleased. Okay, text 29. Maitreya answered, Dhruva Maharaja's heart, which was pierced by the arrows of the harsh words of his stepmother, was greatly aggrieved. And thus, when he fixed upon his goal of life, he did not forget her misbehavior. He did not demand actual liberation from this material world, but at the end of his devotional service, when the Supreme Personality of God appeared before him, he was simply ashamed of the material demands he had in his mind. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This important verse has been discussed by many stalwart commentators. Why was Dhruva Maharaj not pleased, even after achieving the goal of life he desired? A pure devotee is always free from any kind of material desires. In the material world, one's many material desires are almost demoniac. One thinks of others as one's enemies. One thinks of revenge against one's enemies. One aspires to become the topmost leader or topmost person in this material world, and thus one competes with all others. This has been described in the Bhagavad Gita, 17th chapter, as a surrogate. The pure devotee has no demand from the Lord. His only concern is to serve the Lord sincerely and seriously. And he is not at all concerned about what will happen in the future. In the Mukunda Mala Sutra, King Kalushakara, author of the book, states in his prayer, My dear Lord, I don't want any position of sense gratification within this material world. I simply want to engage in your service perpetually. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya in his Suksastika also prayed, my Lord, I do not want any amount of material wealth. I do not want any number of materialistic followers, nor do I want any attractive wife to enjoy. The only thing I want is that I may engage life after life in your service. Lord Chaitanya did not pray even for mukti or liberation. In this verse, Maitreya replied to Vidura that Dhruva Maharaj, influenced by a revengeful attitude toward his insulting stepmother, did not think of mukti, nor did he know what mukti was. Therefore, he failed to aim for mukti as his goal in life. But a pure devotee also does not want liberation. He is a soul completely surrendered to the Supreme Lord, and he does not demand anything from the Lord. This position was realized by Dhruva Maharaj when he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead present personally before him, because he was elevated to the Vasudeva platform. The Vasudeva platform refers to the stage at which material contamination is conspicuous by absence only, or in other words, where there is no question of the material modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, and one can therefore see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because on the Vasudeva platform, one can see God face to face. The Lord is also called Vasudeva. Dhruva Maharaj's demand was for a position so exalted that it was never enjoyed even by Lord Brahma, his great grandfather. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was so affectionate and kind towards his devotee, especially to a devotee like Dhruva Maharaj, who went to render devotional service in the forest alone at the age of only 5 years, that although the motive might be impure, the Lord does not consider the motive. Oh, that's good news. He is concerned with the service. But if a devotee has a particular motive, the Lord directly or indirectly knows it. And therefore, he does not leave the devotee's material desires unfulfilled. These are some of the special favors by the Lord to a devotee. Desires, okay. These are some of the special favors by the Lord to a devotee. Dhruva Maharaja was offered Dhruvaloka, a planet that was never resided upon by any conditioned soul. Even Brahma, although the topmost living creature within this universe, was not allowed to enter the Dhruvaloka. Whenever there is a crisis within the universe, the demigods go to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shiva Vishnu, and they stand on the beach of the Milk Ocean. So the fulfillment of Dhruva Maharaj's demand, a position more exalted than that of even his great-grandfather Brahma, was offered to him. Here in this verse, the Lord is described as Muktipati, which means one under whose lotus feet there are all kinds of mukti. There are 5 kinds of mukti: Sayuja, Salukya, Salukya, Samukya, and Shasti. Out of these 5 muktis, which can be achieved by any person engaged in devotional service to the Lord, the one which is known as Sayuja is generally demanded by Mayavadi philosophers, that is, merging into the impersonal Brahman. They demand to become one with the impersonal Brahman, effulgence of the Lord. In the opinion of many scholars, this Sayuja Mukti, although counted among the 5 kinds of mukti is not actually mukti, because from Sayuja mukti one may again fall down to this material world. This information we have from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32, wherein it is said, Patanti adha, which means they again fall down. The monist philosopher, after executing severe austerity, merges into the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. But the living entity always wants reciprocation in loving affairs. Therefore, although the monist philosopher is elevated to the status of being one with the effulgence of the Lord, because there is no facility for associating with the Lord and rendering service unto him, he again falls into the material world, and his service propensity is satisfied by materialistic welfare activities like humanitarianism, altruism, and philanthropy. There are many instances of such fall downs, even for great sannyasis in the Mayavada school. Therefore, Vaishnava philosophers do not accept Sayuja Mukti to be within the category of Mukti. According to them, Mukti means transferal to the loving service of the Lord from one's position of serving Maya. Lord Chaitanya also says in this connection that the constitutional position of a living entity is to render service to the Lord. That is real Mukti. When one is situated in his original position, giving up artificial positions, he is called Mukti, or liberated. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is confirmed. Anyone who engages in rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord is considered to be mukta, or brahmabhuta. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee is considered to be on the brahmabhuta platform when he has no material contamination. In the Padma Purana, this is also confirmed. Mukti means engagement in the service of the Lord. The great sage Maitreya explained that Dhruva Maharaja did not desire in the beginning to engage in the service of the Lord, but he wanted an exalted position better than his great grandfathers. This is more or less not service to the Lord, but service to the senses. Even if one gets the position of Brahma, the most exalted position in this material world, he is a conditioned soul. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati says that if one is elevated to real, pure devotional service, he considers even great demigods like Brahma and Indra to be on an equal level with an insignificant insect. That's not a really great position to be in. The reason is that an insignificant insect has a desire for sense gratification, and even a great personality like Lord Brahma also wants to dominate this material world. So much for what Lord Brahma wants. Sense gratification means domination over material nature. The whole competition between conditioned souls is based upon domination of this material nature. Modern scientists are proud of their knowledge because they are discovering new methods to dominate the laws of material nature. They think that this is the advancement of human civilization. The more they can dominate the material laws, the more advanced they think they are. Dhruva Maharaja's propensity in the beginning was like that. He wanted to dominate this material world in a greater position than Lord Brahma. Therefore, Elsewhere, it is described that after the appearance of the Lord, when Dhruva, Maharaj thought and compared his determination to his final reward, he realized that he had wanted a few particles of broken glass, but instead had received many diamonds. As soon as he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, he immediately became conscious of the unimportance of his demand from the Lord to have an exalted position better than Lord Brahma's. When Dhruva Maharaja became situated on the Vasudeva platform due to seeing the Lord face to face, all his material contamination was cleared. Thus, he became ashamed of what his demands were and what he had achieved. He was very much ashamed to think that although he had gone to Madhuvana, giving up the kingdom of his father, and he had gotten a spiritual master like Narada Muni, he was still thinking of revenge against his stepmother and wanted to occupy an exalted post within this material world. These were the causes for his moroseness, even after he received all the desired benedictions from the Lord. When Dhruva Maharaj factually saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there was no question of a revengeful attitude towards his stepmother, nor any aspiration to lord it over the material world. But the Supreme Personality is so kind that he knew that Dhruva Maharaja wanted this. Speaking before Dhruva Maharaj, he used the word Vedaham because when Dhruva Maharaj demanded material benefits, the Lord was present within his heart and so knew everything. The Lord always knows everything a man is thinking. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita also. Vedaham Samitani. The Lord fulfilled all Dhruva Maharaj's desires. His revengeful attitude towards his stepmother and stepbrother was satisfied. His desire for a more exalted position than that of his great-grandfather was also fulfilled, and at the same time his eternal position in Dhruva Loka was fixed. Although Dhruva Maharaj's achievement of an eternal planet was not conceived by him, Krishna thought, what will Dhruva do with an exalted position within this material world? Therefore, he gave Dhruva the opportunity to rule this material world for 36,000 years with unchangeable senses and the chance to perform many great sacrifices, and thus become the most reputed king within this material world. And after finishing with all this material enjoyment, Dhruva would be promoted to the spiritual world, which includes the Dhruva Loka. Wow. Text 30. Dhruva Maharaj thought to himself, to endeavor to be situated in the shade of the lotus feet of the Lord is not an ordinary task, because even the great brahmacharis headed by Sanandana, who practiced Ashtanga Yoga in trance, attained the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet only after many, many births. Within 6 months, I achieved the same result, yet due to my thinking differently from the Lord, I fell down from my position. In this verse, Dhruva Maharaj himself explains the cause of his moroseness. First, he laments that to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly is not easy. Even great saintly persons like the 4 celebrated brahmacharis headed by Sanandana, Saraka, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara practiced the yoga system for many, many births and remained in trance before getting the opportunity to see the Supreme Lord face to face. As far as Dhruva Maharaj was concerned, he saw the Supreme Personality. He saw the Supreme Lord personally after only 6 months of practice in devotional service. He expected, therefore, that as soon as he met the Supreme Lord, the Lord would take him to his abode immediately, without waiting. Dhruva Maharaja could understand very clearly that the Lord had offered him the rule of the world for 36,000 years, because in the beginning he was under the spell of the material energy and wanted to take revenge against his stepmother and rule over his father's kingdom. Dhruva Maharaja greatly lamented his propensity for ruling the material world and his revengeful attitude towards other living entities. Text 31. Alas, just look at me. I am so unfortunate. I approach the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can immediately cut the chain of the repetition of birth and death. But still, out of my foolishness, I prayed for things which are perishable. Yes, a real devotee never asks for perishable things. The word anatmiyam is very significant in this verse. Yeah, it's a mistake here, but anyway. Atma means the soul, and anatmiya means without any conception of the soul. Srila Rishabhadeva instructed his son that unless a human being comes to the point of understanding the Atma, or spiritual position, whatever he does is ignorance, and this brings only defeat in his life. Dhruva Maharaj regrets his unfortunate position, for although he approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was always able to give his devotees the highest benediction of cessation of the repetition of birth and death, which is impossible for any demigod to offer, he foolishly wanted something perishable. When Hiranyakashipu asked immortality from Lord Brahma expressed his inability to offer such a benediction because he himself is not immortal. Therefore, immortality, or complete cessation of the chain of repeated birth and death, can be offered by the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, not by others. Harim vina naiva shrutim taranti. It is said that without the blessings of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no one can stop the continuous chain of birth and death within this material world. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is also called Bhava Chit. The Vaishnava philosophy and the process of Krishna consciousness prohibits the devotee from all kinds of material aspirations. A Vaishnava devotee should always be anya vilasita sunya, free from all material aspirations for the results of fruitive activities or empiric philosophical speculation. Dhruva Maharaj was actually initiated by Narada Muni, the great Vaishnava, in the chanting of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This mantra is a Vishnu mantra, for by practicing the chanting of this mantra, one is elevated to the Vasudha or Vishnu Loka. Dhruva Maharaj regrets that although he was initiated in the Vishnu mantra by a Vaishnava, he still aspired for material benefits. That was another cause for lamentation. Although he got the result of the Vishnu mantra by the causeless mercy of the Lord, he lamented how foolish he was to have strived for material benefits while practicing devotional service. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. Okay, I think our time is up. So this is a warning to us, followers of Krishna consciousness. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. So, does that mean that Dhruva is not a transcendental personality? No, it doesn't. It just means that we can learn from Dhruva's experience. We should never look down upon a personality like Dhruva Maharaj. But we should understand that sometimes Krishna will put his devotees in difficult situations to teach ignorant people like us what is the right thing to do. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so what is our takeaway today? Our takeaway today is a Vaishnava devotee should always be Anya Vilasita Sunya, free from all material aspirations for the results of fruitful activities or empiric philosophical speculation. Dhruva Maharaj was actually initiated by Narada Muni, the great Vaishnava, in the chanting of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This mantra is a Vishnu mantra, for by practicing the chanting of this mantra, one is elevated to the Vishnu Loka. Okay, so a Vaishnava devotee should always be Anya Vilasita Sunya, free from all material aspirations for the results of fruitive activities or empiric philosophical speculation. That is our takeaway today. On the other hand, if it says, in other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service and Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. Well, this is a warning and a, let's say, direct instruction by which we can make spiritual advancement. What is the warning? Every one of us who is engaged in devotional service of Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. So there's a warning and there is a good instruction. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Are there any questions?
Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Danvat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Dhruv prayed intensely for 5 months under the guidance of his Gurudev sincerely. And Lord benedicted him many things, but 2 important things. He benedicted him that he will never forget him. And the second one, which is where I have the question, that Lord fulfilled all his desires, including his revenge desire. So that means Lord fulfills all the desires we have in our heart, even for including the revenge. And ha- like it's so hard to remember Krishna all the time. And to Dhruv Maharaj, Lord gave him the benediction that he will always remember him. So I think there are two questions, but or maybe one.
But yes, what is what is the one question?
So the question is that Lord will fulfill all desires, even the revenge desires for his devotees.
Well, that means that the devotee does not desire correctly. But the Lord will satisfy even that desire to help the devotee understand that it's a mistake. And the devotee will feel ashamed that they desired such a thing. That's why it says here, Dhruva Maharaj regrets that although he was initiated in the Vishnu mantra by a Vaishnava, he still aspired for material benefits. That was another cause for lamentation. Although he got the result of the Vishnu mantra by the causeless mercy of the Lord, he lamented how foolish he was to have strived for material benefits while practicing devotional service. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service and Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we'll have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. So Dhruva is giving an example of not being able to give up material desires. So even though he can see the Lord, although he's received the mercy of the Lord, he still could not give up his material desires, and now he's lamenting for that or regretting it. So we have to be very careful to become completely surrendered to the Lord. The Lord does not want us to have vengeful thoughts and desires. And he wants us to have a clean slate of only good thoughts and good desires for everyone's welfare. So otherwise we're going to regret, like Dhruva Maharaj, that although he was initiated in the Vishnu mantra by a Vaishnava, he still aspired for material benefits. This was another cause for lamentation. Although he got the result of the Vishnu mantra by the causeless mercy of the Lord, he lamented how foolish he was to have strived for material benefits while practicing devotional service. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service and Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. So I think we're going to hear more about that lamentation of Dhruva Maharaj. So this is a warning that anyone who wants to be a genuine devotee must give up all these material desires and replace them with desires to please the Lord. But if we cannot completely eliminate these material desires and even go to the point of having vengeful desires, then we will lament. We will not be really happy. We will lament.
That's what it says here. Although Dhruva Maharaj got the result of the Vishnu mantra by the closest mercy of the Lord, he lamented how foolish he was to have strived for material benefits while practicing devotional service. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service and Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaja. There it is. That's our takeaway today. We should think about this very seriously. And otherwise, we will never be free from the chain of repeated birth and death. We have the opportunity to free ourselves with the mercy of the Lord, but if we cannot give up the material desires at the same time that we're praying to the personality of Godhead, then it says that when one can stop the continuous chain of birth and death, when it says that it is said that without the blessing of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no one can stop the continuous chain of birth and death within this material world. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is also called Baba Shiva. The Vaishnava philosophy in the process of Krishna consciousness prohibits the devotee from all kinds of material aspirations. A Vaishnava devotee should always be anya vilasita sunya, free from all material aspirations for the results of fruitive activities or empiric philosophical speculations. Dhruva Maharaj was actually initiated by Narada Muni, the great Vaishnava, in the chanting of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. This mantra is a Vishnu mantra. For by practicing the chanting of this mantra, one is elevated to the Vishnu Loka. Dhruva Maharaja regrets that although he was initiated in the Vishnu mantra by Vaishnava, he still aspired to material benefits. That was another cause for lamentation. Although he got the result of the Vishnu mantra by the closest mercy of the Lord, he lamented how foolish he was to have strived for material benefits while practicing devotional service. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. Well, we should learn vicariously. Why should we go through the lamentation of Dhruva Maharaj? We should learn from his example to completely give up all material desires and simply desire to please the Lord. Otherwise, we will lament like Dhruva Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Any question?
Can I ask a question, Maharaj?
Yes, you can.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, Dandavat Pranams for the beautiful class as always. Maharaj, in the purport where it said that the motive is not that important, but service is more important. Can you elaborate a little on that, please?
Who said that?
I think I forget, in some purport we were reading just in this class right now, where the Lord looks at the service and not motive.
Well, the motive should also always be to please the Lord.
Okay.
It's not that the motive doesn't count. What counts is your service to the Lord. Well, no, the motive has to be pure.
Okay.
Otherwise, you will not be able to approach the Lord properly. That's the answer.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Your
Thank
motive,
you.
your motive must be pure. It should not be, you can't approach the Lord with a contaminated motive. You approach the Lord with a pure motive. Okay, so here let's read some things here. A Vaishnava devotee should always be anya vilasita sunya, free from all material aspirations for the results of fruitive activities or empiric philosophical speculation. Dhruva Maharaj was actually initiated by Narada Muni, the greatest Vaishnava, in the chanting of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This mantra is a Vishnu mantra, for by practicing the chanting of this mantra, one is elevated to the Vishnu Loka. Dhruva Maharaj regrets that although he was initiated in the Vishnu mantra by Vaishnava, he still aspired for material benefits. That was another cause for lamentation. Although he got the result of the Vishnu mantra by the course of mercy of the Lord, he lamented how foolish he was to have strived for material benefits while practicing Krishna devotional service. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. So this is a warning given to us that once we receive the mantra, meaning for us the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we should give up all material desires but replace them with spiritual desires to please the Lord. We should not be like the Mayavadis who say no desires, no good desires or bad desires, no desires. But that's incorrect. We should replace our bad desires with the good desires of wanting to please the Lord. It's impossible to become desireless. Although the Mayavadis try to become desireless, but it never really works. So, we'll be very satisfied when we replace our material desires with desires to please Krishna and his devotees. Then we become a devotee also. It's impossible to give up all desires. That means you're dead. Yes.
So Maharaj, when Dhruva Maharaj felt ashamed for his desire, unknowingly he started like that. Now he is feeling that it was not a good desire to get from the Lord. He could have rejected and asked something what a devotee should have done, right? Why did he, even though the Lord is merciful and give it to him, he could have said that he doesn't want that, he is happy with the darshan of the Lord and uh, eternal service with the Lord, something like that. Right? He could have asked, he could have replaced his desire at that time, right?
Well, okay, first of all, Dhruva was initiated by Narada Muni. And this mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, this mantra is a Vishnu mantra. And by practicing the chanting of the Vishnu mantra, one is elevated to the Vishnu Loka. Dhruva Maharaj regrets that although he was initiated in the Vishnu mantra by a Vaishnava, he still aspired for material benefits. That was another cause for lamentation. Although he got the result of the Vishnu mantra by the causeless mercy of the Lord, he lamented how foolish he was to have strived for material benefits while practicing devotional service. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations. Otherwise, we will have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. So Dhruva Maharaj is giving us an example of what happens when we mix material and spiritual desires together. We'll end up lamenting. But, so therefore, his example is teaching us what not to do. In other words, if you say, well, I'll chant Hare Krishna, but I'll also do some nonsense. That doesn't work. If you want to be a real devotee, that then you have to completely surrender to the Lord. And otherwise you'll never stop the chain of repeated birth and death. So that's why it says the Vaishnava philosophy in the process of Krishna consciousness prohibits the devotee from all kinds of material aspirations. A Vaishnava devotee should always be anyavilasita sunyam, free from all material aspirations, meaning all material desires, for the results of fruitive activities or empiric philosophical speculation. Dhruva Maharaj was actually initiated by Narada Muni, the great Vaishnava, in the chanting of the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This mantra is a Vishnu mantra, for by practicing the chanting of this mantra, one is elevated to the Vishnu Loka. Dhruva Maharaja regrets that although he was initiated in the Vishnu mantra by a Vaishnava, he still aspired for material benefits. That was another cause for lamentation. Although he got the result of the Vishnu mantra by the causeless mercy of the Lord, he lamented how foolish he was to have strived for material benefits while practicing devotional service. In other words, every one of us who is engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness should be completely free from all material aspirations, meaning all material desires. Otherwise, we'll have to lament like Dhruva Maharaj. So how do you become free from all material aspirations or desires? Well, it's by loudly chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Not silently chanting, but loudly chanting Hare Krishna. Gradually, all those material desires will go away. If you silently chant, it's possible that you can still think of those material desires by silent chanting. But by loudly chanting, all those material desires gradually go away. So we should chant loudly. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You chant loudly.
Yes.
Okay, very. You chant loudly, but
Yes.
very. You chant loudly.
Yes, Maharaj, after your instruction.
Okay.
Because I was doing once, you told me don't do that.
That's right. Don't do it. I always get scared when I see someone chanting silently. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So our takeaway today is don't chant silently.
Hare Krishna.
Chant loudly. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So now we will begin to chant loudly. For our rounds. 16 good loud rounds. Haribol. Thank you very much. Have a very good day. Don't be afraid of anything. And follow Srila Prabhupada's advices. Hare Krishna. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.